As Gen Z millennials stumble into work hungover and lungs filled up with off-brand vape hits, they punch the clock for another day, making just enough money to not die tomorrow. In this video, we're going to continue the discussion surrounding why modern generations are struggling to get by and why boomers just don't seem to get it. And despite which generation you're from or which tax bracket you seem to find yourself falling into, don't forget to leave your thoughts and opinions down below, and a huge shout out to him for you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. Now, let's begin this shit show.
People talk a lot about having a midlife crisis, and I've definitely had one. What a midlife crisis was for me was you start to really realize how finite your life is. I don't have another chance to have a 25-year career. I don't have another chance to raise my kids. Like, this is it. And you start to realize, like, this is the only thing you're gonna get. And then you start to think about what's left and what do I wanna be doing with that time? And I think that's really where midlife crisis, I think it's a good thing because it kind of means you're waking up and you're realizing what Confucius said a long time ago, which is we all have two lives, and our second one begins when we realize we only have one.
Gen Z is facing a midlife crisis. Let me explain. For decades, experts used to see that the middle age was the unhappiest part of life. That's where the expression midlife crisis came from. The fact that people tended to be unhappier in their middle age. But now that is no longer the case. Experts are finding that the younger people are, the unhappier they are. In other words, what was once a midlife crisis now happens in the earlier stages of life when people used to be young and happy. Instead of being young and happy, they're young and miserable. Of course, that's no fault of their own. They have a lot of obstacles. Many of them can't even afford to date, and the job market is absolutely terrible. So it's no wonder what was once a midlife crisis is now a crisis in people's earlier and younger years. But the good news in all of this is that there's nowhere to go but up, unless, of course, times get even worse in the future. And to all the people who've contributed to times being so bad for them.
It seems as if modern generations such as Gen Z millennials seem to be the first ones to complain about minimum wage and the current day working force, being that these are the majority of the people in this modern day population filled up within these jobs. And the majority of the jobs are minimum wage. Think about the gas stations, the convenience stores, the grocery stores, a lot of these places, that's where the majority of the population work. And with many people kind of giving up on the whole idea of a career because those aren't very secure anymore, most people have to pick up 2 or 3 of these minimum wage jobs, which still doesn't really entitle any sort of security in its own self, in its own little righteous. So it kind of leaves people in modern day finding themselves kind of envious of the older generations who, some of them do find themselves being able to retire, where if you read through a lot of the comments, and I'm sure you probably feel this way as well, you don't see retirement ever really being a concept that you can actually grasp for yourself. So if you personally feel like maybe you do have enough saved for retirement, if you feel like your retirement plan you have set for yourself will be able to compound interest enough into actually, reality, feel free to leave some tips and tricks down below. But if you're just like me and many of us in modern day, I'm 25, I'll be 26 in a month, but I've read a lot of comments from a lot of you guys who are even, 10 years older than me. The idea of retirement seems to be a lost concept nowadays.
It's kind of crazy to think that it really only took one generation of things going away from really the traditional way of life before people start running immediately back to it, right? Like, our parents were kind of like that first generation that broke that traditional mold. And then now in our generation, or at least in my generation, you're seeing people sprint back to the traditional ways of life, whether it be from a family structure perspective, whether it be from the way you make your food, whether it be the way education is. People are already seeing the scam, which shows you how broken everything is. Because if it was working, or maybe even if it was decent, it would take multiple generations to change. But what you're seeing is it's changing in one generation. It shows how broken everything is, right? I grew up thinking that the only people who had chickens or anything like that were people who lived on 1,000-acre farms. And now I live on a little half-acre here in North Georgia, and I've got 17 chickens. My wife bakes her own sourdough. She stays home with our kids. Like, we are kind of returning back to a more traditional way of life, and I think it's because we see how broken everything is, right? And we don't want that. I don't want that for my kids. I look at the world right now, I look at how people act and talk and live, and I don't want that for my kids. I don't even want that for me. And it's crazy that took one generation.
More than 70% of Gen Zs have decided that jobs are for losers. They all said the same things. We don't understand why we would give up 40 hours of our life every week to sit in a cubicle with old people who don't understand what we're trying to do and make 1/3 of the money we can make when we do it ourselves. And the truth is, the franchise systems really help them hit that hurdle. This is not hard for somebody that age to take the resources online and the systems and structure and hit a home run. If you have young people, you're really doing them a disservice by pushing them into a traditional career. It's not the important thing to do that it used to be.
With the money being oh so tight, and we are approaching upon the holiday season, it seems as if the whole idea of traditionalism has kind of been thrown out the window a few years back, and definitely right now in modern day, being that nobody can really afford to, give the kids a white Christmas with all the snow outside and all the gifts under the tree, and we can't really do that anymore. We kind of have to, hopefully, Trump will let us get our EBT, and then we can get enough, snacks from Dollar Tree for the kids. But if they're out because everybody's going to be humbling up at the food shelf, it seems like that the majority of us are going to have a not very wholesome Christmas. And even myself and a lot of the comments were kind of boycotting the holidays because it's really just hurdles to keep us in the way from spending money on bullshit that never really gets appreciated or touched after the holiday seasons are over. Now, a lot of people are starting their New Year's resolutions already, but at the end of the day, what is really a New Year's resolution? It's just the way for the gym memberships to get a quick little couple months boost, and then everybody falls short of that too. So really, it feels like it's almost like human nature to fuck up on our follow-ups.
I've been talking a lot about the generations lately. I'm a millennial, and my grandparents are boomers. I saw a video the other day that said the boomers' last gift to us is that all of their wealth is going to get burned up by end-of-life care because they didn't want to vote for universal health care. And it's getting to that time where my grandparents are starting to age and think about retirement, and most of them have no money. Most of them live paycheck to paycheck just like I do. And it's really sad to watch them have very few options and basically have to keep working even though they don't want to. And I wonder what that generation thought was going to happen. Like, they thought they would all be millionaires by now and wouldn't need a social service when they got old. And I'm very indifferent to saving for my own retirement because I see my grandparents who worked hard their entire life and prioritized working over taking care of their kids. My parents were a latchkey generation. Their parents were always at work, and look what it got them, living paycheck to paycheck just like me. And I have hope that our system will be different by the time I'm that age. But if it's not, I will at least have lived a life where I didn't kill my nervous system to take part in just a meaningless consumer culture that is burning up all of the natural resources of the earth. And it really seems to me that people my age and younger were born with different nervous systems. Whatever you want to say the mechanism of it is, we are more highly sensitive than the older generation. I see them being able to force themselves into jobs that we are just not able to force ourselves into. And I don't know if it's more of us are neurodivergent and autistic, or that more of us just accept ourselves and can't force ourselves into functioning like they did. I do not want to own a home that is physically separate from all the people in my community. I don't want to own my own car. I don't want to stockpile my resources. I want to have something that I can use regularly and have a comfortable life. But I would much rather just be working in a group with a bunch of people that have like-minded ideals, that live in the same place as me, to have emotional connection with those people. And my grandma says, oh, if I had just gone to college, if I had just made a bunch of money. I'm like, having a lot of money and having a good job does not solve the ills of the society that we live in. I think that our ways of being are fundamentally organized for human unhappiness and isolation. And I'm super sick of it, and I don't think most people want it. I think most people have been sold this. And who knows, I may spend the rest of my life trying to organize something that feels right to my nervous system, but it would be a worthy endeavor rather than killing my nervous system to have a bunch of money.
Boomers, Gen X, are these some of the last generations to ever be able to truthfully retire? Being that many Gen Z millennials don't really even have much hope or ambition in their 401ks. Hey, many people in my peer group don't even actually contribute to their 401ks, because they don't even ever see retirement being much of an option, with the cost of living being so raised, with inflation being so raised. And I do understand that your 20s is one of the best times throughout your life to actually grow this compound interest in this sort of regard, but with many people not really having much extra money to go about anyway, we barely have enough money to survive, taking on debt, doing payday loans and cash advances. Many people don't really have extra money to save, so the compound interest is not being built at all to begin with. So if you are older and you personally have found yourself saving, maybe you had to spend all that money on health issues or other, current, dilemmas within or throughout your life, feel free to leave those stories down below in the comments. Many people can probably relate to those. But if you did find yourself figuring it out despite all these, other messes and hurdles throughout your life, maybe also share that, because many people are really lost with hope. And especially Gen Z millennials, I feel like retirement still could be possible, but the whole concept's going to be kind of rearranged into a different broad scale. That's going to wrap up another video discussing how younger generations such as Gen Z millennials are lazy and entitled, and how old people like Gen X and boomers are old and washed up. Well, none of that seems to be true. I don't really believe in the stereotypes or the groupthink, but whatever your thoughts, opinions are, I'd love to read those down below in the comments. I love to sort through those, read through those, and respond to the ones I see fit. So as a huge shout out to the handful of you guys checking out those links down below in the description. Those are always some of the best ways to support me and the content around here. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope to see you next one. It's kind of all I got for this one, so see you next one. God bless. Bye.